Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Realtors Commercial Alliance live stream. Very excited because today is the day that we are talking about commercial industrial real estate. Real estate. Yes, industrial real estate. We love industrial real estate. I've been involved in industrial real estate since the 70s. Yeah, the 70s. Grew up in a family that we bought, leased, and sold industrial real estate, and it was a lot of fun. Actually, I think agriculture is part of industrial, isn't it? And then back in the year, what was it? 1999. 1999. Yeah, I did a hostile takeover in the Silicon Valley. That was a lot of fun. And part of my responsibilities in the Silicon Valley while I was doing that was actually I managed our real estate portfolio for the company. We
Oh,
had 50,000 square feet of logistics and another 35,000 square feet of manufacturing. So I had a lot of firsthand experience in dealing with industrial real estate. So that it's going to be a lot of fun today. Really excited to have you on board. Max Zaker is our guest today. And I first was connected with Max, what was it, in January when you hosted the Commercial Investment Forum for the California Association of Realtors?
yes, it was January. Yes.
Yeah. And so before that, I'd never seen Max before. I had no idea he even existed. Afterwards, we hopped on the phone, we talked a little bit, and I learned that Max has had a great career in industrial real estate. And I thought, hey, Max, let's go ahead and do a live stream together and talk about industrial real estate and how people who are in industrial, maybe they'll learn a few things from your years of experience. People who are thinking about industrial, they can learn about industrial real estate. And there may even be some residential agents who are curious about commercial real estate and what area aspect of commercial real estate should they tackle. And so let's give them an idea about industrial and how that works. Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's
What?
start
Mhm.
by Max. I'd like to know about your background. First of all, did you grow up in a family that focused in real estate, or is real estate something you discovered, in college or after college, or what?
Well, I grew up in a family that when you met somebody that you didn't know, they wouldn't ask you what school you graduated. They ask you if you own real estate. So that the idea of real estate was planted in my head at a very young, early age. But I did not grow up in a family of real estate practitioners. Something that I learned, as I became an adult. And I'll tell you more about it as we go through the show.
Cool. All right. So, but I'm really, really curious about industrial and how did you get involved in industrial?
Great question. Thank you for asking. Well, thank you for having me, Chris. Really appreciate it. So I've been practicing as a realtor in the commercial arena since 2012. In fact, I have
Hmm.
to go back and look at my license to see what year I was licensed.
Yeah.
And but that I really learned the art and the language of commercial real estate working for a very large foundation, a nonprofit developer called the Jacobs Foundation, which was a foundation founded by a multi-billionaire philanthropist, Dr. Joe Jacobs, that launched a international engineering company and made a bunch of money in the stock market, billions, and he decided that he wanted to do some good with it. So I live in San Diego. And I met Dr. Jacobs at a fundraising event, and fast forward a month later, he offered me a job to go work for his foundation, and they gave me this fancy title, Director of Economic Development. Basically, what they did was we identified a 57 contiguous acreage in Southeast San Diego, one of the areas that when you think of San Diego, you think of blue skies and palm trees, but there are areas in San Diego, much like Los Angeles, where the entire community had really fallen into disinvestment for years. So the foundation had identified this area. We had a pilot project called I don't recall the name now. And basically, they gave me a kind of sort of unlimited budget, foundation money, and they gave me this contiguous area. I worked with a title company. I pulled a list of all the owners in that area. There are around 700 parcels
Hmm.
made up of completely dilapidated warehouses, light industrial buildings, wasteland, a lot of contamination, a lot of disinvestment, some housing complexes, so on and so forth. So for the first 5 years, I was knocking on doors trying to track down the owners and trying to buy these properties. So in 5 years, I managed to acquire, in fact, I have to go back and pull my notes, um, 524 parcels.
Wow.
And I was not a realtor at that time, but somebody within our organization, he was a broker. So he was writing up all the contract, but I was out there doing the negotiation, offering people ridiculous amounts of money for properties that were absolutely nobody wanted to touch. So that's where I learned the language and the art of commercial real estate. And that obviously prepared me. And then when I left that job, I was there for about 12 years. We were doing massive amount of development, redevelopment, and new development. Then I became a realtor, decided, hey, you know what? I think I like this. I want to go do this as a profession. And then I started doing that in 2012 and have been practicing commercial real estate ever since. Of course, along the way, I've built a few other large residential real estate brokerages that are nationwide. But my love and passion has always been commercial real estate.
Cool. So are you still actively engaged in industrial?
I am. In fact, there are two particular areas that I focus on. One is industrial, and the reason for that is because of my close proximity to the US-Mexico border.
Hmm.
And for those of you that know San Diego, there are about 100,000 semi trucks that go back and forth, bringing goods into the United States and taking goods into Baja California. So there is an explosion of light industrial development along the US-Mexico border, both on the Mexico side and on the US side. So obviously, I kind of sort of broke into that niche market, I call it. So I've been very active in the industrial area. I would say light industrial. You don't find heavy
Hmm.
industrial. They're mostly logistics, distribution, warehousing, some light industrial. So that's one of my niche markets. Yes.
So when you say 100,000 trucks, you mean 100,000 trucks every year across the border, or you mean there's semi trucks that are dedicated to trans international trade with Mexico?
So the number that I got was 100,000 trucks per day, per 24-hour cycle. It is, if you go watch this thing, it is unbelievable
Whoa,
what
whoa,
happened
whoa, whoa. 100,000 trucks a day
of
just
bringing goods.
crossing the California-Mexico border, or you mean the United States-Mexico border?
United States-Mexico border. So if you look at
Okay.
San Diego, there are three border entries. One is more for pedestrian vehicular,
Yeah.
and they just built a new gateway between United States and Mexico specifically for trucks, and it's expedited. So you can kind of look this up yourself. When I first heard about this, I honestly I was kind of sort of baffled by it. But if you research it, you'll see for yourself. It's much more than what most of us think about. The number that
Yeah.
was given to me was about $2.6 billion of trade happens annually between the United States and Mexico, and most of that is transported via land.
Wow. And of course, every truck has to go to a dock someplace and unload.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there is I would say millions of square feet of um, light industrial logistical distribution centers are being developed along the border. This is all in the last 10 years, not including Amazon. Amazon has one of its largest distribution centers there. And prior to that, there were probably over 300,000 acres of uh, land that had just been there. Most of it was owned by the federal government because of its close proximity to the border, but they have now been entitled for development. So there's a lot happening there. And you can just
Wow.
Google that, put Otay Crossing, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay, cool. All right. Before we get any further, let's just talk for a couple of seconds about commercial real estate and why someone who's maybe in residential would think about commercial real estate, or maybe someone's even thinking about getting a real estate license. Being the administrator of our association, I answer the phone calls and emails and stuff, and just had someone inquiring today about our organization. And I talked to someone a couple of days ago, and they're like, "Hey, I've been dealing business to business here for a while, and I'm really thinking about getting into commercial real estate." So let's just talk for a moment about why commercial real estate. And so you gave me this here slide. So let's just have you go ahead and talk through why you think someone should be interested in commercial real estate.
Sure. I mean, the simple answer is, one commercial real estate deal can equal potentially 6 to 8 or 10 residential deals.
Hmm.
So if you're a math person like me, I mean, it's a very simple math.
Yeah,
And I think second, talking with many residential realtors, one thing that I always hear from them is, "Oh my God, I've had these clients, I've purchased them a few homes, they're business owners. Now they ask me, oh, could you help us, buy a commercial property?"
yeah,
I hate to say no, but then I don't have the expertise to do it. Where do I go learn? So I think some of it is just through the relationships that residential realtors develop with their clients, and some of it is economically. Um, it's the numbers are really staggering.
yeah. Well, my first listing. So having been an executive in the Silicon Valley, I really didn't have any problem talking to wealthy people, right? So my very first listing, once I got my license in 2017, I got my license, was a portfolio of apartment buildings located throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. And the total value of that listing was over $250 million.
Wow.
Not bad for a first listing. So
Not bad at
in
all.
in full disclosure, I did not sell the listing. The owner of the properties, he when I was asking him to list his properties, he's like, "Chris, I want a premium price for my properties. You know, there's not a really good chance that you're going to sell it. Are you sure you want this listing?" And so it actually took us like over 2 months to negotiate the listing agreement, but we did it. I ended up not selling out any of them, but it opened a lot of other doors for me. And so that's, in my opinion, if someone wants to give you a listing and it's overpriced, if it works well for your future goals, take it.
Yes, I think that's a very nice nugget to really offer to people that are thinking about entering the commercial real estate market. And then
Yeah.
I just thought of something else, Chris, as a follow-up to your question. Why should residential realtors consider commercial? And if you're anybody like me, non-emotional,
Hmm.
what I love about commercial real estate is there are no emotions. Nobody cares about the size of the kitchen or the size of you don't have to deal about how grandma feels. You're dealing with investors, with CPAs. It's a return on the investment. And I grew up in a business world, and when I handle commercial transactions or deal with clients, the conversations are very different.
Yeah.
That's another reason,
They're
yeah.
very different, but I have to disagree with you slightly because I think anytime you're dealing with large amounts of money and people who own the money, it's a
Yeah.
very emotional underlying decision, even though on the surface it's analytical. But at least you don't have to deal with, well, my teenage daughter doesn't like the wallpaper in what's going to be her bedroom, so we're not buying the house, even
Yeah.
though everything else is perfect. So, and the other thing about it too, as we have on our slide here, is repeat investors. How many times have you, or tell us your best client? How many transactions have you done for your best client?
God, you have love that question. Um, I think my highest was same investor in a span of, I want to say 14 years. I represented them, I believe, in five and a half transactions. And I say five and a half because one of them I was co-listing with another colleague. And that represented that one client represented well over $32 million of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for good reasons, as real estate practitioners, obviously, we enjoy repeat client, but that
Right.
also comes with a huge responsibility, Chris.
Yep.
And these clients don't just come back to you just because they're short of finding a commercial practitioners, but it is that personal relationship, it is that level of service and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, this particular client that I'm talking about was a foreign investor and who enjoyed investing in the United States real estate market. So there were many channels I had to go through to be able to work with this individual. So that's what I mean by it comes with a huge responsibility and level of trust that you have to maintain.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that you included as a bullet point when you sent me the slide was long-term leases, which really brings into question kind of the age-old issue of when someone is starting in commercial real estate. For me, it looks like the easy entree is to start by leasing because you can generate income faster and hopefully those leases will turn into sales. So, what's your opinion about leasing as a path to being a listing agent or a buyer's agent for an investor or an
Absolutely.
owner operator?
I think that's kind of the lowest the lowest barrier or entry into the commercial real estate. Um, and here's the other thing that some people may or may not know because I get asked this question often. Well, how do you earn a commission off of leases? This is the way I kind of explain it in the most simplest way. Take the face value of the lease and multiply that whatever percentage commission that you negotiate. Very
Hmm.
simple. You negotiate a lease for, some tenant, and the rent is, $8,000 per month. They negotiate a 60-month lease, 5 year, 60 times eight. That lease has a face value of $480,000.
Hmm.
So a potential owner could, take that back to the bank and borrow money against it. So and then for $480,000, let's say you negotiate 2.5%, that's your commission.
Hmm.
It's just as economically fruitful as any other type of a transaction, but yet it does not require all the expertise that you have to have with disclosures and everything else that comes with obviously selling a commercial real estate, but you're simply negotiating the terms. So I think that's a great way to enter. And I love what you said. That potential tenant representation could somewhere down the road become a potential buyer.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and zero in on what we want to talk about today is industrial properties. Okay. So go ahead and work through the slide that you sent us.
Yeah, so again, I put this example for those of you that are practitioners, you may find this information redundant, but I had to go ahead and break it down because I'm a numbers guy. So, and this is a very simple illustration of a $12 million transaction, which again, if you're in Los Angeles, the price point is probably different than other places, but I would say the Los Angeles market is very similar to some parts of San Diego.
Hmm.
So a $12 million warehouse, you're probably looking at around a 28 to 30,000 square foot building, which is a typical size for a warehouse distribution, logistics, light industrial. Um, a $12 million warehouse transaction at a 2% commission, that is your potential commission that you'll earn off of one transaction. Now, that's why I said, one commercial transaction would potentially equal, 6 or 8 or 10 residential transactions. Again, depending on the market that you're in, the numbers obviously vary. So we're just averaging that out.
Yeah. I have a listing agreement out for review right now. It's a $10 million list price with a
Mhm.
3% commission.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
Not bad at all. And again, I took a 2% because, obviously the larger the transaction, you're going to have to be flexible in your commission. But I would say a transaction, around 12 million, 2 to 2.5% is what we seem to be able to negotiate. But of course, as a disclaimer, all commissions are negotiable. Nothing is a set price.
Exactly. All right. And so e-commerce and logistics, this seems to be the big driver in your market where you're at in San Diego.
Definitely along the OTI corridor. And again, look at how Amazon really changed the way we shop.
Hmm.
Although I was always pushing back against it, but in the spirit of transparency, my wife and I sometimes we even order our groceries online, and lo and behold, within 3 hours later, they deliver it. Now, all that stuff has to be housed somewhere. There is
Right.
a logistic behind it. There's transportation system. So I have experienced really an explosion. And this is all in the last 10 years. What e-commerce has required, and the other part of it is, Chris, the AI companies that
Hmm.
are now requiring these massive warehouses to store all that information. There's specialized buildings. So
Right.
again, I think between e-commerce and really technology-based companies and AI, we're seeing a significant increase in warehouse and distribution demand.
Yeah, a lot of people call AI data centers, but now they're
Yes.
calling it information factories or knowledge factories,
Hmm.
which is very cool, I think, moving from an old industrial revolution manufacturing to the modern
Yeah.
information era of manufacturing information. Okay. So when you look at typical business, what percentage are you looking at as being sales of properties versus leases of properties?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really give you a definitive answer. I can only share my own experience. I tend to be heavier on the tenant or buyer representation because I think that's because I like doing that.
Yeah.
Um, I like to be able to negotiate and get best terms for my clients.
Hmm.
Because when you're on the listing side, really the negotiations are different, the motivation is different.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say, depending on your experience, I think as you become more and more experienced, especially if you are part of these larger, more established commercial brokerages, that tends to be heavier on the listing side. But for people like myself, even though I'm part of a nationwide brokerage, but it's we don't specialize in commercial. Um, I would say good 70% of my transactions are either tenant or buyer representation, which by
Hmm.
the way, I find it to be more fun because I get to be more creative. I get to really put my negotiation skills to work for my clients. And I feel like that I've really earned, the commission versus if you're a listing agent perhaps your duties and responsibilities are slightly different.
Yeah. So pause and hold that thought for just a second because I want to talk about the Realtors Commercial Alliance of California real quick. And when we're finished talking about our association, then I want you to share with us maybe an example or two of the most creative transactions you've been involved with. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. So, our mission statement at the Realtors Commercial Alliance in California, we are the only commercial association of realtors in the state. And so we empower our members to thrive in commercial real estate through education, networking, and fostering collaboration among commercial, residential real estate professionals and business brokers. So some of our membership benefits are our commercial real estate education and training, such as today we're having Max on talking about industrial real estate. And we do these Zooms right now. We're scheduling them for once a month, where we tackle a different area of commercial real estate and we do education and training. Also, once a month, we have a Zoom session where we do a commercial real estate project pitch and professional networking. And so that's your time if you want to join our Zoom. And this is open to non-members also. So just go down to rcaoc.org, sign up for our mailing list if you want information on our events. And we're planning on doing some social events this year. We are a virtual organization since we cover the entire state of California, but we are hoping to do some social events. And we also have a member hotline for our members to call. And we've got quite a few things coming up. In fact, our schedule of what's coming up extends beyond this here little slide. But next week is our Zoom where we're doing our commercial real estate property pitch and professional networking. Um, Next month, our live stream is business brokerage secrets for commercial realtors with business broker and business broker attorney Tanya Gilreath. And Tanya is fantastic. She's out of Southern California and she's involved in business brokerage properties or opportunities all across the United States. And so she's actually, she was the chair, I don't know if she still is the chair, of the forms committee for the California Association of Business Brokers. And I served on that committee with her for over a year, helping the business brokers develop the forms that are needed for that profession. So you're going to love Tanya. She's great. And then we've got every month is our property pitch. And then coming up in May, Joel Carlson, who's been a frequent guest of ours here on the Realtors Commercial Alliance program, he's going to be talking to us about how to list and sell triple net properties. So that's his specialty. That's what he does. All right. And of course, we'd like to thank our sponsor, deferredtax.com. So please check them out and learn about deferring taxes on your commercial real estate transactions. All right. So industrial, back to industrial. Max. All right. Your most creative or your most fun transaction for structuring. Tell us about it.
Well, I don't know about most fun, but I'll tell you the most complicated. I have a couple of examples. So the first one goes back to when I worked for the Jacobs, and I remember one of the properties that I wanted to acquire was something like a 30, 35, 36 unit apartment complex.
Mm-hmm.
And the tenants were predominantly, let me paint this picture for you. Think about a mom and dad with six little ones living in a one-bedroom apartment. That's
Okay.
kind of what was going on.
Yeah.
So we struck a deal, we agreed upon a price, and then at that time, I went to our board and I presented the contract. I said, here it is. I just needed the approval to be able to pull the trigger on it. They said, well, wait a minute, we don't want to displace these individuals. What is your plan? And I said, well, these properties are not in a habitable condition. They said, well, we're a foundation. We're not in the business of displacing people. What are you going to do? So I
Right.
had to go back with a plan. And I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy the property. Then I'm going to come up with a transitional plan. So I had to literally move 36 families, find them, replacement property, and we paid for all of their costs again because we were a mission kind of related organization.
Right.
And quite frankly, no education, no training will prepare you for that. And you can
Mm-hmm.
imagine all the emotions, everything that I had to deal with. So that was a great example. But walking away from that, it gave me such enormous sense of um, satisfaction that I was
Mm-hmm.
able to move these families from a horrible living condition to a much, much better condition. And then we gave him a commitment that once we redevelop that property, we give him the first right of refusal to be able to come back and rent one of those apartments. So that was a very interesting one. And the last one, or the second one, was when the marijuana became legalized in California, which was a few years ago.
Right.
Literally the day that in San Diego County, our local jurisdiction agreed to go along with it, literally within a day or two, my phone was ringing off the hook by these individuals that were in the licensing process to obtain one of these dispensary permits. But
Right.
part of the permit process was they had to identify a potential location that met the zoning requirement, which were
Mm-hmm.
very stringent. So I had a couple of large companies that came to me and they said basically, whatever the price is, we don't care, but you've got 48 hours to go find us these properties that meet the zoning requirement. They couldn't be, within a certain proximity of a school and so on and so forth.
Right.
But it doesn't stop there. We can't buy the property until we get our permit. That could take about a year and a half. So you got to negotiate this in such a way that would tie the property down, but we can't pull the trigger until we get our license. So there were some very interesting creative negotiations that went in for me to
Mm-hmm.
get, and I actually got two of those for two different clients. One of them didn't go through because they didn't get the license, but the other one did. So I had to create a win-win, both for the buyer and then, of course, for a seller who would say, well, why would I want to tie up my property, for a long extended period of time? So that was another example that comes to mind.
Cool. Let's go ahead and talk through this slide. And this is our last slide, actually. And so, why industrial?
Why industrial?
Yeah.
Um, because the transactions are larger in
Mm-hmm.
volume, cost-wise. Um, and I happen to personally like um, dealing with clients that are in light industrial logistic business.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it presents some unique opportunities, especially if they're investors. People that occupy these buildings typically stay on for a longer period of time. So industrial properties are in high demand by investors
Right.
because the risk factor versus retail properties that are kind of higher turnover.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and then they carry a higher price point. Negotiations are usually much easier. And the people that are buying these properties are larger investment portfolios that tend to be not easier to deal with, but you're dealing with portfolio managers, money managers, they look at performers and they kind of understand the value of the property. So, and then I think the light industrial or industrial property, as I said, there's a high demand for it because of e-commerce.
Yeah.
And that really has changed the makeup of our market. So that's something that I tend to focus on and I like, you know, and there may be other reasons, but for me personally, um, I seem to be able to get negotiations done faster in industrial property versus other type of commercial assets.
Okay. So some of the bullet points that you put here on the slide, let's just go through them one by one real quick. So many of the leases run 10 to 20 years.
Exactly. I mean, as an owner, who doesn't want to have a tenant who's willing to commit to a 10 to 20-year lease?
Yeah.
And then predictable income. Again,
Mm-hmm.
these are larger companies. The chances of failure for these companies are far less riskier than startup companies. Um, and property valuations, quite frankly, I mean, I'm seeing appraisals coming in way over sometimes even asking prices. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
all driven because of the high demand. And the other thing is these institutional investors, they love to trade up and trade down.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot of turnover. And
So
they
what's
buy
the
them.
smallest size that you're seeing that institutional is interested in? Is it like a $5 to $10 million range or higher?
Yeah, I would say 7 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of turnover. They hold them for 2 or 3 years, and they either pull their money or they move into a larger portfolio. So there's quite a bit of turnover there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The last industrial project I did was a lease to a private equity owned company. And so it's a security company, did a project down in Long Beach, and they were looking to grow their footprint. So they were looking for a larger industrial property. So we found them one, but they're looking at a large growth trajectory.
Hmm.
And so we're looking at in 2 years, either expanding that same lease into an adjacent building or looking for a new property for them. So it was actually a shorter one. And I don't know about you, but I have a minimum fee that I charge on every transaction, which kind of whittles out a lot of the small transactions because I'm just not interested in wasting my time on a lot of small stuff. And so they paid my minimum fee because the actual lease commission on a percentage rate wasn't enough to meet the minimum.
Right. I think on the smaller deals, you're right. I've done it a couple of times, but yeah, that's typically on the smaller leases. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
hmm So when you're looking at commissions, and it commissions vary from area to area, but do you have kind of like what's your smallest deal size that you're looking at?
Um, that's not how I started. Obviously, I started just doing small deals. I remember my first transactions were, I was representing, chiropractor offices, 2,000 square feet, and with a $5,000 commission. And that was great for me because I
Yeah.
was building those relationships.
hmm
And but I would say now, I think the smallest commercial transaction that I've done, it's probably around just under 3 million. If I can have a couple of deals in escrow right now, a couple of smaller office buildings, 2.8, 2.7. Um, and along those lines, for people that want to get into the medical building, let me share something with you. And I kind of found this out myself, um, that a couple of, or maybe more than a couple national banks, one, for instance, is US Bank. I don't want to advertise for them, but it's factual. They actually offer this particular buyer, husband and wife, both physicians, they're buying it as an owner occupied. They
Right.
offer them a conventional commercial loan, not SBA,
Yeah.
with 15% down, 1.5, at 4.8%.
Wow. When was that?
This is now. This is like
Now.
it's incredible what is
Now.
happening. I said I'm not buying it. So the buyer said, "Can you please talk to my lender?" I said, "Let me call him." So I called the guy. I said, "Look, you better not be pulling my leg because these are very special clients. They send me a commitment letter."
Yeah.
And I said, "Tell me why and how you guys are doing it." He said, "Listen, this is a special program that we only have for physicians
Yeah.
because their default rate is minimal,
Yep.
no points, no upfront fees." So again, for people that want to get into the medical field, these are the things that you have to know and you have to learn about. And when I really kind of did a pro forma for this couple, should they lease versus should they buy? And
Yep.
I factored in some cost segregation and analysis. It really turned out to be an amazing investment opportunity for them. So again, those are the things that I would encourage folks that want to get into the commercial business. Go deeper than just the transaction itself. Really understand what's available, what tools are available, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, on that subject, back in 2021, I met a dental rep who was selling to dentists. And I said, "Oh, by the way, if you ever have any referrals for me, please let me know." And so he sent me a referral, and it ended up being a long-term project. We identified a property, but we had to go through some zoning issues with the building department. So it took a year and a half for us to close that deal. But he liked the way I was dealing with that dentist. So then he referred me another dental group. And so I talked to them, and they're like, "Yeah, we'd like to get a property to have a satellite office for our main practice." And so I came to them at the first meeting with the only property I could identify in the area that they were interested in. They loved it. So we entered into that transaction. And then while we were talking, they're like, "Well, we leased our primary office, but we'd like to buy it." And so I represented them on the purchase of the space that they were in, their main office. And all three transactions, one took 18 months, another took like 60 days, and the other one took less than a month. And they all closed within like 14 days of each other.
Wow.
So that's just one of those things about commercial real estate is you never know when you're entering into something how long it's going to take. I've got a transaction I'm working on right now. I started in July of, no, it was pre-COVID. I started it before COVID hit. And due to some legal complications, the death of one of the principals, we're not going to be able to actually actively market this for about another 18 months. So
Wow.
it'll be a 7-year project probably from start to finish to
And I
sell
think that Yeah. I think
It's an
that's a
$8
good
million
point.
property about.
I think that's a really good point that you brought up, Chris, for people, for our colleagues that are thinking about entering the commercial market, to keep that in mind because it does create a cash flow issue as a practitioner. Larger transactions, bigger payout, but you're right, they often take much, much longer. In fact, I think the fastest commercial transaction that I've done um, was like 70, 75 days, and that was like record time. Just because the commercial financing underwriting just takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
Different avenues they have to look at. Often there are environmental studies that are involved, so on and so forth. So great point that you bring that up.
Yeah. That dental practice, because we'd already done all the financial underwriting for the purchase of the satellite office,
Mhm.
and the bankers love these guys. Like
Yeah,
you said, medical. They love medical. They love the
yeah.
stability. They love the cash flow they were producing. They're like, yeah, they had the whole thing approved in like 14 days
Wow.
on that because we already had another transaction in process and they had plenty of equity and collateral. So it worked out really well. One of the things that I look at is cycles, and every segment of commercial real estate goes through cycles. They go through at different times. And industrial, I think, really hit its peak during COVID when all these companies were looking for that last mile distribution center for doing, like we were talking about earlier, distribution to get things to the client during COVID in as quick a time. And so you didn't want to wait for your product to come from the East Coast if you were sitting here in California. And so a lot of people were looking for, local warehousing and stuff, smaller areas that they could send their delivery drivers out from. That whole thing seems to have simmered down up here in Northern California, where I'm at. It's not quite as hot as it used to be, and
Mhm.
you're seeing industrial properties that are vacant and they're not being able to lease up. What are you seeing down in your neck of the woods as far as industrial? What's hot right now?
Yeah. What is not moving fast is the large footprint industrial properties, 100,000 square feet and up.
Mm-hmm.
What seems to be a kind of a trend is, anything under 50,000.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with, 15 to 20, 50,000 of square foot kind of a footprint seems to be, especially if they are built as such that they can be divided up fairly easy, which most of these newer units are. They're tilt top, they're designed that way. Um, there seemed to be a high demand for that, and I think a lot of it is due because of there's a few clusters of transportation hubs in San Diego County. Um, and then what seems to be very hard to find is anything under kind of, I would say, between 3,000 to 15,000 square foot. These, what do we call them now? The flexible industrial spaces.
Right.
In fact, the building that I developed for my own company, which is in the southern portion of San Diego, I actually developed it. It turned out that I had to buy the land and develop it.
Mm-hmm.
And because I couldn't find anything in that size. They were either too small or too large. So
Right.
that kind of range in what we call now business parks, what used to be heavy industrial, but now they're kind of becoming the new trend. You're seeing a lot of medical offices, flexible uses, and things of that nature. And we, seem to be quite active in San Diego County.
Yeah. One of the things that I think maybe a trend that's maybe more than regional would be looking at some industrial properties who are a little bit bigger, but they're subdivided into some smaller spaces, and the tenants in those spaces would really like to own their space but not move. And so buying a property like that, um, turning it into basically like condos,
Condominiums, yeah.
and then selling the individual
Yeah,
units to the occupiers, I think
yeah.
is a good opportunity for people to have that skill set.
I think so too. Yeah. And then the other thing, Chris, that I'm seeing some happening is actually the reverse of it. where commercial properties or industrial properties, not industrial, but office buildings, commercial, it all kind of wraps under that umbrella, that are being going through adaptive use, that are being
Hmm.
turned into live, work, loft, those types of things. Again, all of that is really kind of driven by the e-commerce, right? That there are
Yeah.
more and more remote work opportunities
Hmm.
where professionals can now work from home. So they want to find a place that doesn't look like a condo, but doesn't look like an office. So we're seeing quite a bit of that stock of these office buildings that sat vacant for quite a while and now being going through this transformation. So there's a lot of movement, traction, and transactions happening in there. Um, so again, for anybody, listening in, if that's what you, but it does require a little bit of expertise. You have to understand interior design and some of that movement, because the energy in the building changes when you go from a prior, office industrial to residential. But it's a new trend that I see happening quite a bit.
Yeah. Let's talk for a little bit about a residential agent who wants to get into commercial real estate and is specifically industrial.
Hmm.
There's a lot of residential agents I've found over the years that, oh, well, I sell houses and it's been fine. Commercial looks easy. And then they get into the deal, and all of a sudden they find that there's a lot of technical issues that they hadn't counted on. So, what's your advice to the cocky residential agent who wants to get into commercial?
You know, um, in fact, my good friend Michael Simpson, um, whom I do quite a bit of work with, we're both commercial practitioners, he coined this as resimercial.
Hmm.
And specifically, I think to your point, for residential agents that want to do some commercial transactions. So my thing is this: um, do what's in the best interest of your client first.
Yep.
If you do not have the expertise, I highly recommend that you partner with a commercial practitioner, make that referral, but ask the commercial practitioner, would you allow me to be a fly on the wall and go on this journey with you?
Hmm.
That way, you provide the best level of service to your client, which we are required to do so by our license. But at the same time, it's a great opportunity to earn some money, but most importantly, learn the art of commercial real estate. It's very different. Yes, real estate is real estate, but the process is significantly different. So I would say do that a couple of times. In fact, on that point, um, I get quite a bit of referral from our residential agents because they know I'm a commercial practitioner. And the reason why I do that is I never interfere in the relationship. I always tell them, listen, it's your client, you have the relationship, you are the front person. I will never get between you and your client. And I offer them a very generous referral fee. And I insist that they stay involved in the transaction so that they can learn and at some point go on their own. That's,
Yeah.
I get quite a bit of referrals like that.
Well, my entire business model as a commercial agent is to help residential agents with their commercial transactions. And so I've actually closed transactions from coast to coast with residential agents who didn't understand commercial. Now, I never operate outside of my license. So if I'm in a state, if they are in a state where, I'm not able to give the direct advice and stuff, we get in Zoom. We say, look, this is your local agent. They're in, say, Florida, and
Mhm.
they're licensed in Florida. I'm in California, but I'm providing the back end support for your agent to help you
Mhm.
close this deal. So if you ask a question that requires a license, your agent is going to be answering the question. I won't. Now, I might give you an answer what happens in California, but I can't speak to what your laws are in Florida.
Yeah, and I think it's great to be a part of the network. I think that the community that you've created, Chris, I think it's a wonderful place for residential agents to be involved. So you learn the language, and I would say go seek some specialized training. There are some training available that you'll learn, how to do a performa, how to do a return on investment. There's a technique to it. And then lastly, I would say this is how I kind of made those relationships. Go serve on your local planning commission. I did
Hmm.
that for 8 years. I volunteered my time, but
Yeah.
honestly, I got more out of it than I really gave to my city. It put me in front of developers. It taught me how to the zoning, the land planning, the language that developers and city planners use. They're great opportunities if if you really want to get into this business. I would say don't starve yourself of education. Be informed and make sure that you represent your clients well, and then collaborate.
Yeah.
Maybe for the first few transactions, seek people out. There are a lot of people in this business like you and I that are willing to take their time and teach and coach, but this is not a classroom training. The best level of training to me, it happens inside the transaction, boots on the
Hmm.
ground. But I would say I think that's a great way to A, serve your client at the highest level, B, earn some money and learn.
Yeah. So specifically with industrial real estate, there's a lot of specialized knowledge that people don't realize is necessary. So, for example, looking at utilities, what are the power requirements of your client, and does the building have it? And if the building doesn't have it, can the local utility even deliver the power requirements to the building? Because a lot of times the infrastructure of the grid
Doesn't
is
exist.
challenged. I know when dealing with properties down in LA County, it
Mhm.
can take 24 months just to get an electrical connect,
Yeah.
which is just ridiculous, in my mind, thinking about that.
Yeah, and I would absolutely, and I would expand that to even some medical buildings, like
Hmm.
X-ray labs. I mean, a lot of people don't know that these are specialized buildings. They require different type of infrastructure, air circulation, and so on and so forth. So again, there's a lot that go into these what I call specialized buildings that serve a particular type of use.
Yeah, and industrial too, a lot of times you have to worry about what is the clear height. And for those residential people who don't know what clear height is, it means what's the usable space under the rafters where you can put pallets and use forklifts and put manufacturing equipment, things like that.
But I would say, I think, living in California, I think we're blessed that we really are a state that drives commerce. So for people that want to get into the commercial real estate, I think it's a massive opportunity still to this day. If you look at the amount of goods and services that are being transported across the state, um, they require a place to house them. They require distribution. And we have massive, medical communities and so on and so forth. A lot of technology, tech-based companies that are still in the state of California. So I think there's tremendous opportunities out there, depending on kind of what part of the commercial field you want to get into. But I would say find your niche.
Yeah.
Don't be a jack of all trades, just like doctors. They specialize in one thing. Now, everybody goes to a medical school, but at the end of the day, they specialize. And I would also encourage our colleagues that want to get into this business, specialize in one or two things and be really, really good at it.
Hmm. No, definitely. When a new person, maybe a residential agent who wants to get into commercial, they're always like, well, I want to do multifam because they're familiar with residential. And I say, well, don't necessarily limit your scope because everybody wants to do multifam. So you're going to have a lot of competition there.
Yeah.
And what I suggest to people is go out and start talking to people and say, look, I'm now working in commercial real estate. I'm working with a team. And so we can handle whatever your needs are. What do you have, or who do you know that's interested in commercial real estate, and how can my group support them? And be open to things that are outside necessarily your specialty. When I first got involved in commercial, I wasn't sure what I was going to end up with. And I ended up with a $250 million multifam listing. Okay. Because I was out there making connections. And then I made the connection with the dentist. And I've ended up doing more medical transactions than any other type of single transaction because I allowed myself to be open to what God brought my way.
Hmm.
But once you start working in an area, then you can focus in that area. So you can be more specialized. But don't necessarily limit yourself in the beginning if you're trying to find your way to something that you're familiar with, because you may find a deep water option, the blue water option that you can specialize in that you hadn't even thought of.
Love it.
So it's about time for us to wrap up here. And I'm curious, when you're dealing with someone who's maybe stuck and they're like, well, I don't know what I want to do. How should I proceed? Give us, one or two points of advice, maybe a little system of how you would recommend someone to start generating prospects, referrals, maybe even income right away, starting today, something they can do today.
hmm I would say tenant representation to me is a great way to start.
Hmm.
There's an enormous amount of individual startup businesses that really need some guidance, some technical expertise to be able to negotiate a commercial lease.
Yep.
I would say that's a good way to start. And here's the other thing, don't be afraid of getting your hands dirty. Pick an area that is a cluster of, industrial, get some cards, go out there and talk to the tenants. Hey, how long have you been here? Have you ever thought about, are you thinking about relocating? Are you thinking about buying a property?
Hmm.
Just go out there, get in front of people, start talking to people. You will be amazed how relationships forge and opportunities are created. Um, I would say I would prefer, to start here and rise up versus try to start from the top bottom. Yes, be
Right.
flexible, but the fact of the matter is, Chris, for a institutional investor who wants to make a 10 or 15 million dollar transaction, they most likely are going to require a set of expertise and skill set,
Hmm.
and as they should. So I would say for our friends that they want to get into the market, um, go partner with some residential agents. Offer a good referral fee. Just tell them, hey, listen, if you have a commercial client, I'll be the boots on the ground, right? We work together, collaborate, right? And then also go out there and talk to people. It's very simple. It's no different than getting into the residential business, except we don't do open houses. But go talk to business owners, go to medical offices, leave your contact information, ask questions, and start building a database. And then if you can find a active commercial practitioners, ask them, hey, can I just come along? You can just pay me a small fee. I just want to learn. And you'll be surprised how some commercial practitioners that have a big book of business, they love to teach and coach. It's just that if you don't ask, you won't get. So I would say don't be shy to ask.
Yeah. The other thing that someone can do today, and this is self-serving to a certain extent, is number one, you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to this channel and take a
Absolutely.
look at the other videos. There's a lot of education for residential agents and commercial real estate. We've got videos on environmental, we got leasing best practices for commercial. We've got lending videos. There's a lot of stuff on here, resources that you can start learning. So when you go out, you don't sound like someone who doesn't know anything.
Yeah, and I say, although this is not my area of expertise, but I would be remiss not to mention the social media, especially
Hmm.
for for the generation that really grew up on social media. Put yourself out there. Let people know, hey, if you're a startup company, if you're a tenant, you're thinking about relocation or expansion, I'd love to help you find your new location. Put it out there. Let people know that that's what you're willing to do. And then also, I love chambers of commerces.
Hmm.
Go become a Chamber of Commerce member. It's a small fee, but that puts you in the mix of business people. Because if you want to get into the commercial, you got to be in the business community, and that's a good place to go and shake hands and make some connections and build some relationships.
Yeah. Max, I really enjoyed this conversation today. I hope you have too.
Likewise.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining us. And we look forward to interacting with you in the future and seeing you maybe on some commercial investment forum broadcasts coming out of CAR. So, by the way, what's happening with the commercial investment forum? Let's give you a chance to
Yeah,
plug what CAR is up
yeah.
to with commercial
Thank you
real
for
estate.
asking. In fact, I believe April 27th. They have scheduled the next Commercial Investment Forum at the next CAR business meeting, which I think will be in Sacramento.
Yeah,
And so what I've requested is that at least a portion of that forum would be dedicated to continuing the conversation that we had on Zoom, to really ask the attendees, what should the future of the forum be? Should it be converted into a committee? Should it be combined? So if you happen to be in Sacramento, please consider attending. And then I'm thinking through the first half of it. I would love to have a topic of discussion. So perhaps I'll be able to call you, Chris, and pick your brain and get some ideas from you, because we want to have a topic of discussion, and then the other half of it really continue the discussion about what would the future of the forum look like, so that it provides the type of value that you're offering on this platform. Because I know one thing that I was made clear to me, that from the leadership, they really feel that CAR should continue to provide value to commercial practitioners. And so that was made clear to me. The question is how. So remains to be seen, but that will be on April 27th during the CAR business meeting, I believe in Sacramento.
perfect. Well, I intend to be in Sacramento for the CAR business meetings because I am one of the CAR directors. And so I look forward to seeing you there. And if there's something I can do to support your efforts with the Commercial Investment Forum, I'm here to help.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. This was an amazing conversation. I enjoyed it.
All right, thanks. And so we're going to sign off now. Everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. Please visit rcaoc.org. And if you're not already part of our newsletters, please sign up there. And we look forward to having you as part of our opportunity.